In this lesson, you'll learn how to import media from your camera. Whether your primary camera is an iPhone, a DSLR, a GoPro camera, or a high-end production camera like those from Red and Arri, the basic workflow and approach is exactly the same. Keep in mind that some professional formats, like Sony XD-Cam and Red, require a third-party plugin in order to import their respective media files directly into Final Cut Pro. To see a list of the formats you can import and work with in Final Cut Pro, go to the Help menu and choose Final Cut Pro Help. Then locate the section called Supported Media Formats. After connecting your camera, card reader, or drive to your Mac, the drive will appear on your desktop. Depending on your Mac OS version, in some instances, another app may get launched that recognizes the media card. Just quit the app if that occurs. Double-clicking the mounted volume will reveal the contents of the card. Depending on the camera's make and model, you'll often see different file structures on the drive. It is very important that the card's original data structures be preserved. In other words, you never want to alter, move, or delete any of the files stored on the card. Doing so introduces the possibility of Final Cut Pro being unable to import your files. Since you don't have access to my camera's original media card, I created a camera archive you can import from. Open the Final Cut Pro X Library Media folder you opened in the previous lesson. This folder contains another folder, a library, and a retro-looking film canister called a camera archive. A camera archive, like the name suggests, is an archival copy of a camera's original media card. There are two benefits to creating a camera archive. For one, all your camera's media is copied into the archive, so you have a backup. Second, the card's critical data structures are preserved, so you can import your media directly from the camera archive within Final Cut Pro as if it was an actual media card. In fact, there's no structural difference between a connected media card and a camera archive. Because you never really have data until you have it twice, I highly recommend that you create a camera archive before reformatting or deleting media from your card. I'll cover how to create one at the end of this lesson. Back in Final Cut Pro, open the Import Media window by pressing Command-I. If you have your camera or card reader connected, it will appear in the Camera section at the top of the sidebar. In the upper left of the window lists all your connected cameras and flash memory cards, while the Devices section displays your connected hard drives and disk images. The Favorite section is where you can access shortcuts to various import destinations on your Mac. By selecting a camera, in this case my connected Canon DSLR, Final Cut Pro will display all the media recorded on the card in the area below the viewer called the Clip Browser. Clicking this button at the bottom of the window toggles the clip layout between a list or film strip presentation. The film strip view is the preferred viewing mode when you need a thumbnail view of your entire card's contents. The list view is preferred when you need to see all your clip's metadata, such as start and end timecode, duration, content creation date, and so on. To follow along, select Desktop, then navigate to the Final Cut Pro X Library Media folder. Click the disclosure triangle next to the camera archive to reveal a list of clips stored on it. These metadata columns are helpful for getting information about each clip prior to importing. The columns can be rearranged to suit your working habits, and you can hide or add more metadata columns by right-clicking on a column header. Items with a check mark are columns that are currently visible. To show frame size, select it, and this item will appear in the list. Each clip can be selected with your mouse pointer, or you can use your up and down arrow keys to move up and down through the list. Items that appear in the Devices section do not give you the option to view your media as a film strip. Selecting a clip reveals the clip's film strip and displays the clip in the viewer directly above. Move your mouse pointer right or left over the film strip to skim the contents of the clip. The skimmer is the thin red vertical line at your mouse pointer. The value of the skimmer is that you can locate the best parts of your video with lightning-fast efficiency. Once you've located the material you're looking for, press your space bar and the clip will play in real time from the current skimmer position. Final Cut Pro lets you import single or multiple clips, or just specific portions of clips called selection ranges. To create a contiguous selection, click the first clip you want to include, then hold the Shift key and select the last clip. All clips between your selection will be included when you click the Import Selected button. To deselect, click in the gray area around the clips. To select discontiguous clips, hold down the Command key and click. Often, however, you'll only want to import portions of your clips to save hard drive space. But more importantly, importing only the material you want will save you from having to sift through mountains of unwanted media later. Locate clip NC2A9446. This is a clip of Mitch doing some pre-flight prep of his helicopter. Skim to the frame just as the camera begins to crane upward and press I on your keyboard to mark an endpoint. Skim to the frame just as the rotors make a few revolutions, then press O to mark an outpoint. Your initial selection appears within a yellow boundary called a selection range. Skim a bit further, about a third into the clip, as the rotors are whirring at full speed. To start a new selection range at the skimmer position, press Command-Shift-I. Skim to just before the camera starts its move downward, and press Command-Shift-O. You'll now see two distinct selection ranges. If we were to click the Import Selected button now, we would only be importing the content within the ranges, and we would end up with two separate clips in our event. Let's look at an alternate way to create multiple selection ranges. To clear out the ranges already set, choose Clear Selected Ranges from the Mark menu. Skim to the frame you want to start your selection range, then click and drag to the right until you see the frame you want to end on in the viewer, then release your mouse. By dragging the edge of the selection range, you can add more frames or exclude more frames from your selection. To add another selection range, skim to the frame you want the next range to begin on, then hold down the Command key and drag to the right. When you release your mouse, you'll see both ranges turn yellow to indicate which portions of the clip you intend to import. Before going any further, clear out the ranges by pressing Option X. Often it's helpful to make your selections while viewing an audio waveform. For example, you want to import only portions of an interview. Click the Film Strip button, then place a check next to Waveforms. Selecting any clip will display a waveform below the image film strip. With the first clip selected, for example, it's easy to see where in the clip the helicopter flies by the camera. And I can set my selection range around this portion if I wanted to. Because all the clips on this camera archive are relatively short, we'll be importing each clip in its entirety. Select the topmost clip, then shift-click the bottom clip. Make sure the SaberCat event is targeted at the top of the window. In the File section, Copy to Library should be selected by default. The option for Leave Files in Place is not available, and here's why. Anytime you're importing directly from a camera, card reader, or disk image, Final Cut Pro must copy the files into the library. Having the option to leave the files in place would create symlink references in your library to media that will ultimately be removed or ejected, in which case all your clips would be offline the next time you launched Final Cut Pro. Final Cut Pro is just protecting you from yourself. Now let's look at transcoding. Some video formats require a lot more processing power than other formats, and on slower Macs, these formats may result in sputtery video playback. Video formats that Final Cut Pro has traditionally had trouble with are the formats that use an intra-frame codec, such as H.264 and MPEG-4. Many consumer camcorders use one of these formats as their in-camera encoding method. Final Cut Pro will allow you to edit video files from these cameras natively, but often at the cost of performance. By selecting Create Optimized Media, Final Cut Pro will convert the camera's native file format into the high-quality Apple ProRes format. The process of converting media files from one format to another is called transcoding. Transcoding happens in the background and will not prevent you from working with your original media files. Once the transcoded media files become available, Final Cut Pro will seamlessly and transparently redirect from the original media files to the transcoded media files, and you'll notice an improved playback performance, particularly on slower computers. The other option, Create Proxy Media, will create low bitrate files using Apple's ProRes proxy format. You would choose this option when you wanted to keep your file size down while improving performance. This option is particularly well suited for when you have many hours of footage you need to work with but have limited storage options. Normally these options are turned off by default, as checking them will increase the amount of drive space needed to store these additional transcoded files. For example, 1 hour of optimized ProRes footage would take an additional 65 gigabytes of storage space, and 1 hour of proxy would take an additional 20 gigabytes, so you'll need to plan for your project accordingly. The good news is, even if you opted to not transcode your media during the import process, Final Cut Pro will still allow you to transcode your media later, even on a clip-by-clip basis, long after you've imported it. As you'll see later in the tutorial, Final Cut Pro gives you a ton of flexibility in this regard. The files you downloaded for following along with this tutorial were all encoded in H.264 to save download time. You could transcode the media now during import, but you can also transcode the media after you import it. I'll show you how to do that in the next lesson, so leave these options unchecked. The section labeled Analyze and Fix are items you can enable to improve clip organization, color balance, and audio during import. I'll be going over these in much more detail in the next lesson. For now, place a check next to Find People, consolidate Find People results, and create smart collections after analysis. Now, let's import our media by clicking the Import Selected button. The clips immediately appear in the event we targeted inside the H5 Productions library. A small progress circle on each clip indicates which clips are currently being imported. You do not have to wait to begin skimming your clips or playing them back. All the transcoding and analysis is taking place in the background. To see this, click the Background Task button in the upper toolbar. This brings up the Background Task window where you can monitor the progress of a given operation. The awesome thing about Final Cut Pro is that these operations take place in the background, hence the name of this window. You don't need to wait for any process to complete. Your clips are immediately available for skimming, selecting, and keyword tagging in preparation for editing them into your project. Before we end this lesson, let me talk briefly about archiving your footage. Camera memory cards are essentially flash memory cards. That is, they were designed to be used, erased, and used again. It's therefore a common practice to back up the contents of the card to a local drive before or after the media is imported. If the media on the card gets erased or damaged, you'll have a complete backup of it on your computer's hard drive. As stated earlier, a camera archive is nothing more than a bit-for-bit copy or clone of your original source media. After launching the Media Import window, all you'll need to do is select the camera you want to turn into a camera archive from the Camera section, then click the Create Archive button. A window will appear asking you where you want to save the archive. You can save the camera archive wherever you like. However, like choosing a library location, you don't necessarily want to save it anywhere. Potentially, a camera archive could be huge depending on the size of the media card. For example, most of the cards for my Canon DSLRs are 32 gig cards, so I know the archive will never be larger than the card the media is stored on. So you should choose an appropriately large and fast drive, preferably one that gets backed up, because if you lose your archive due to a drive failure, there'll be no way to reconstitute your project. For this example, I'll choose my Documents folder and name the archive SaberCat Archive. By checking Add Camera Archive to Favorites, the archive will appear in the Favorites section of the Import window for quick access anytime you need it. Now all that's left to do is click Create. A progress circle lets you know that an archive is being created. Once completed, you can view its contents by clicking on the icon in the Favorites section. The media will appear in the Browse area, and you can make selections, import, and otherwise interact with it exactly like it was the camera original media card. The great thing about camera archives is that they are completely self-contained and can be moved to another Mac and opened from within Final Cut Pro's Media Import window anytime you want. In the next lesson, we'll look at how to import media from folders in the Mac's Finder.